This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and for a change, we have an affordable but high-end Android unlock phone. This is made by Freetel Wireless, a Japanese company, and this is the Samurai Kiwami. They have a couple of different Samurai models. This is the high-end one, 6-inch QHD display here, a fast octa-core processor, 32 gigs of internal storage, 21 megapixel rear camera with the Sony sensor. It's just all pretty nice stuff, and it sells for $389. So it's right up there with the OnePlus 3, and in this case you get a higher resolution, larger display, not quite as good a CPU as the Snapdragon 820, but still definitely worth a look. And it works in the US with 4G LTE on both AT&T and T-Mobile. Look at it now. The price may be low, but the specs and the looks aren't. This is really actually a very nice looking, quality feeling phone. Inside we have a MediaTek CPU, but a high-end one, so that's not necessarily such a bad thing. 2 gigahertz. It's the MT6795 for those of you who follow it, and has PowerVR G6200 graphics. You got 2 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of storage, a fingerprint scanner, NFC, a GPS with GLONASS, even a high-quality 21 megapixel rear camera and a front 8 megapixel camera. I mean, there's a lot to like here given the $389 price. Oh, and the 6-inch display is IPS and it's 2K resolution, so it's 2560 by 1440. So it's a large phone, obviously, because it's a 6-inch phone, but actually the size isn't that bad. If we put the iPhone 6s Plus, which has a 5.5-inch display on top, you'll see they're almost the same size. So honestly, it's pretty compact given the fact that this is a 6-inch screen size. Compared to something like the Lumia 1520 Windows Phone, for those of you who remember that, that was a lot bigger than this. It's also a pretty nice looking phone too. We have metal along the edges, it's real metal. Got 2 SIM card slots here. One of these also holds a micro SD card, compatible with cards up to 128 gigs. And on the bottom here we have our speaker grills and a micro USB 2.0 port here. On this side we have the power button and the volume controls, and up top there's the headphone jack. Nice little sculpted carved kind of look right here. We got a bevel and a chamfer. This is not supposed to be a budget phone. It doesn't look like a budget phone. And on the back here, we've got this metal surround, and that's the 21 megapixel camera, f2.2 lens, Sony sensor, and we'll talk about that more later. Here's your flash, and this is the fingerprint scanner over here. The texture is so close to this kind of texture on the back here that you might think that, well, it's nothing, but it actually is the fingerprint scanner. And this is a nice looking back. This is not removable on this. It kind of reminds me of the OnePlus 2 finish on it, and it shows a little bit of fingerprint oil. It's pretty easy to clean up though, but all in all, a very nice looking and well-made phone, especially considering it's $389. Now looking at the front here, it's just normal stuff. We got a little chin area, we got our front-facing 8 megapixel camera there with f2.4 lens, and your earpiece. It's a big phone, so aligning the phone with your head when you're talking you might have to wiggle it up and down a little bit. And QHD display here, 2560 by 1440, so that's higher resolution than the OnePlus 3, which would be a direct competitor to this. It's running Android 5.1 Lollipop. Ooh, sorry, not 6.0 Marshmallow yet. It should get Marshmallow, but we don't know when. Inside we have NFC, dual band Wi-Fi, 802.11ac, Bluetooth 4.1 high speed, GPS with GLONASS, so you got all the bells and whistles. And the software here is just your nice, typical, clean Android. It's not all done up with excessive UI or anything like that. A couple of value addeds. You got your FM radio there, a file manager, a barcode scanner came pre-installed on it. All the standard Google Play stuff. It's an official Google sanctioned product. We got your wireless updates, so you can get over-the-air updates. You got a Wi-Fi hotspot feature. It supports HD voice, though on AT&T and T-Mobile I didn't actually get that to work. It's a little complicated as to whether or not carriers are actually going to support that on individual phones here. So the phone does switch over to 3G when you're making a voice call. Not the end of the world, though. The MediaTek processor is sprightly enough on this. It's funny, MediaTek makes a lot of low-end CPUs, but they do occasionally hit the high-end, and the one inside here, the 2 gigahertz octa-core CPU, is a strong enough performer. The MediaTek MT6795 CPU with PowerVR G6200 graphics, 2 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of storage, benchmarks a lot like the Snapdragon 810. It falls a little bit below the 820, so in that way the OnePlus 3 would win because it does have the 820, but honestly, they're both fast phones. This is our Ice Storm Unlimited score here, 16,673. That's a perfectly respectable score. And here's our Quadrant score, 35,338, also a respectable score. It's a pretty fast phone, honestly. And lastly, Geekbench 3. You can see what the scores there are for yourself. Again, right up there with around the Snapdragon 810 or so. So you ain't giving up a whole lot of horsepower here. So how about battery life? 3,400 milliamp battery that is sealed inside. And this is a pretty fast 28 nanometer CPU in here, a big display, fairly high resolution, and believe me, it needs that big battery. I had no trouble lasting it through the day with moderate use to even heavy use or so. You know, a little bit of gaming, certainly social networking, streaming some video, that sort of thing. It's not really a 2-day phone. I'll say that. But you know, with light to moderate use, you probably could go up to 2 days with this phone easily enough. And that's while it's connected to LTE as well. Data speeds, and this was using AT&T's LTE network, are quite good right here. Funny thing, actually, the network was a little bit flakier. Other phones were slower in the earlier days as well. But you can see today's scores here are certainly better. And this is on par with any carrier-branded phone in terms of data speed. So good job there. The rear 21 megapixel camera uses Sony's Exmor RS IMX230 stacked sensor with 192 autofocus points. This is a high-end camera module here. Again, f2.2 lens, and the software is pretty decent too. We've got HDR mode right there, which is not really necessary in this case, but we can turn that off if we want to. Tap to focus. Panorama mode, stitch panorama mode, a whole lot of features going on here. Beauty shot, you get the idea. White balance control. And for video, we have electronic image stabilization, not optical though. And you can record up to 4K video with it. So, how is it in practice? Focusing is pretty good. In low light, yeah, not so much. But other than that, I mean extreme low light. Like right here, this cat was hanging out pretty much in the dark, and he still looks pretty darn good, but it took a little bit more time to focus there. And for outdoor shots, there's a lot of nice detail there for this kind of sort of almost going for a macro shot, getting pretty close to those flowers. So overall, especially for a $389 phone, you're getting quite a nice camera. And the front 8 megapixel shooter, likewise, is pretty good. It's got a fairly fast lens on and fairly high resolution. Definitely better than average video quality. It's, you know, it's approaching the flagship level of what we're seeing today for camera phones. So another good job there by Freetel Wireless. Pretty impressive stuff coming out of Japan. The software settings looks pretty much like standard Android. We have adaptive brightness there, auto brightness turned on, and the settings are pretty straightforward. There's a couple of things they've added on there. Let's see, we have things like scheduled on and off. Fingerprint scanner, so you can enroll your fingerprint. We'll talk a little bit about that. We have Smart Wake, a variety of ways you can wake the phone. Double tap on the screen. You can draw a C to launch the camera. Under gestures here, you get the idea. You can turn all that back on again. Moving through photos in the gallery by going with your phone. Since we have NFC, we have support for contact payments, tap and pay right over here as well. Pretty much straightforward stuff. Now the fingerprint scanner on the back right there, it's a pretty comfortable way to hold the phone. You can actually also use it to launch the camera if you want, but I found that a little bit hit or miss. It was mostly good, but once in a while it just didn't want to behave. And considering the fact that it's not as highly integrated into the operating system, being Android Lollipop rather than Marshmallow, it may have some effect on that. It's decent. It's not as good as something certainly like we'd see on the Samsung Galaxy S7. So that's the Samurai Kiwami by Freetel Wireless. It's available, again, directly from them on their website, or you can get it from Amazon.com, and I think they have an eBay store too if you want. $389, you get a pretty nice high-end Android phone. If you're in the market for something with a very large display, 6 inches, but a footprint that's not any bigger than the iPhone 6s Plus, nice looking display at that, good performance, good size battery inside, a dual SIM card slot for your overseas folks, more important than in the United States where we don't usually make use of that. Anyway, unlocked so you can use with any carrier SIM. Sorry, doesn't work on Sprint or Verizon. They use CDMA, and this is a GSM phone. Anyway, a lot of good stuff in here. It's worth the money. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos.